But you're running out of people to blame. People are sick of the excuses. What's the bloody plan?
This flows into the next question quite well, because we're going to have a look at inflation. Because one of the things you notice in this, and again, Hosking is so close to asking the right question, because you will hear Hosking actually feed Luxon all the things that Luxon's blaming. But what Hoskins doesn't then do is go, when are you going to take some responsibility? He doesn't ask that question, but he lists all the things that Luxon and this government are blaming for where we're at.
What's inflation today, and does it worry you?
Look, it'll be interesting. I mean, it could bounce around. I don't know the number. I haven't been told, but it could be, as you've heard people say, it could be bouncing in around 3%. What the Reserve Bank of New Zealand looks at and what we sort of look at is what's the medium-term inflation. It's supposed to be 2% next year, which gives them confidence to keep lowering rates. I think there'll be a bit of swings and roundabouts. You're seeing massive growth in red meat prices around the world. Yep. You're seeing, dairy. On the other hand, you've got rents the lowest it's been, I think, since 2011 at the moment.
Yeah, rents are good.
And interest rates coming down.
Yeah, but the problem is what you're worried about politically.
Council rates are a big part of it too.
Yeah, exactly. So
12.5%.
Exactly. So the council's the problem, the power company's the problem, the insurance company's the problem. And so what do you do about that?
What do you do about that? The question is, Michael, when are you going to take some responsibility? Like, that's the question. This guy wins the broadcasting award every year. That's the question. The power companies, the this, the that, you're blaming all of them all the time. Labour, John Key apparently gets blamed as well. When are you going to take some responsibility? But unfortunately, his vernacular doesn't quite get there.
The problem, the power company's the problem, the insurance company's the problem. And so what do you do about that? Because that's the political part of the equation, isn't it?
The biggest part of it is council rates. It's about 12.5%, and you think about inflation running at 2.7 today. So it's a big contributor to it's about, I think, 35 basis points of that is actual council rates. That's why we want to explore council caps, rate caps, because actually to make sure councils are using their balance sheets appropriately.
When you say explore...
I want to get to a conversation we always get to when we hear about capping rates, Barb, which is a little side note. We'll come back. And that's places like Gore that need $300 million to comply with their water infrastructure. So when we cap rates and they need $300 million amongst 6,000 ratepayers, that's $50,000 per ratepayer. So those ratepayers could be paying an additional $5,000 each for the next 10 years on top of what they're paying now to get their infrastructure up to standard. And this government, funded by people, whoever is behind the messaging with Ruth Richardson on Q&A, talking about cap rates now, is going to see this country and our infrastructure and councils go backwards further and further and further. I don't know what's below the third world country, but heading in that direction. It's a bit of a bugbear of ours overall, but you are the spokesperson for finance. I'd love to get your take on inflation today and what you just heard from Mr. Luxon.
Yeah, same thing. Spin. When are you going to take accountability and stop adding to the list of people that you're blaming for actually what is your job? A lot of the inflation pressures that we're getting that are sticky are administered costs. Those are the things that you really hard to avoid and really hard for monetary policy to actually make a dent in. So he talked about energy. Well, they sat on that energy report that was done for them, close to a year. Labour wrote to them, Dr. Megan Woods wrote to them in August and said, let's do a bipartisan strategy. Let's try and, find some areas we agree on to provide certainty. But, I asked Chris Bishop just last week in the House when he was acting Minister of Finance, will his measures or his response to that report bring down energy prices? And he goes, it will bring downward pressure. They've sat on this stuff for way too long. And so that's why you expect this. Also, I'm pretty sure there was a previous Labour government that had an idea about how to deal with water infrastructure.
Sort of a centralised idea where
economies of scale.
where we could maybe help Gore out a little bit if they needed it because we're doing okay, and like we could flick them a couple of bucks, and there was a solution to that. But I don't know, what was there one? I've always said if only there was, but you're saying there was one. I don't remember.
If only there was, and that they hadn't stopped it, and then again taken another 18 months to get their own policy underway. You know, this is the thing with the National Party. They make decisions and choices, pull the handbrake up, yes, it leads to 20,000 construction sector roles going, but then they blame it on interest rates. And yet it's the government stuff, it's the government spending that is meant to smooth the cycles. Again, more blame game and less accountability, but that seems to be the MO of this government. And if they're going to keep taking that into next year, into next election, people are getting pretty sick of it now. It's only going to get worse for them.